morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are on our beautiful planet. My name is Angela Carson, or Wander with Angela on YouTube and on my travel blog. Welcome to Always Get Lost, a podcast dedicated to all things travel and about life abroad. Thank you so much for being here. This is one of the solo episodes with just me that will be on the channel from time to time, although the majority of what you'll be listening to in the future are interviews. And the first ones I have lined up are really fun. I am 49 years old. I lived in 3 different countries with my daughter before she went off to university: Spain, the US, and India. I've lived in a total of 8 countries and traveled 37. Now, I fell into travel at a very early age. My first flight was when I was 2 weeks old. My father worked for United Airlines, and that was a pure gift because we never had to pay for flights. You just paid for the tax on the value of the flight. So we were always flying domestically. I didn't start international travel until I did that on my own. But we went to Hawaii and, the East Coast for summers, and it was wonderful to be shown that life so early on. Now, the first time I traveled internationally was to Mexico. I think I was 15 or 16 years old, 15 maybe. And I was, no joke, with my church youth group, not with any of the leaders of the church youth group. It was just us kids. But one of the older kids could drive. And we drove down to Tijuana, which is on the Mexican border it borders San Diego. And that was about hour and a half, 2 hour drive, two-ish hour drive for us. But the legal drinking age in the US is 21, but in Mexico, they didn't care. So we would go down, I'd tell my mom I'm sleeping over at Kim's house, but really we went down to Mexico and we'd stay out all night, drinking and dancing and just having so much fun. Oh my gosh, and eating Mexican food, which you do in Southern California anyway, but it's different there. And those first trips, as stupid and silly as they were, they literally whet my appetite for wanting to submerge myself in different cultures and a life just completely opposite to my own. So it shouldn't be a big surprise that Mexico is the first country that I really traveled in depth. I went on holiday I went for a week down to Puerto Vallarta, and I just loved it. I was attending the University of California, Irvine at the time. I decided that I didn't want that life anymore, that I wanted to come down to Puerto Vallarta and live a chilled existence. So when I went back home, I remember I had flown into LAX. I was driving my Jeep Wrangler back to uni, and I was just looking around at all the traffic and the busyness and just thought, what the hell am I doing here? And I did. I dropped out of uni. I called my parents. They were not very happy with me. I ended up leaving within about 2 weeks, packed up my apartment and packed up my Jeep Wrangler, and I moved to Mexico. I drove down to Puerto Vallarta. I ended up staying there about 2 months, and it was just so nice. The group of friends I had, one of them was a travel agent, and there were no surfing excursions. But in Punta Cana, which back then was just nothing, it was just this gorgeous stretch of beach, which now has, I think, a Ritz-Carlton and a W and St. Regis. I would drive tourists back and forth to Punta Cana. I would rent boards for them for $1 a day. They would pay me $20 each. So I only had to work 1 day a week, which work basically was me having a beer and eating quesadillas and reading a book on the beach while these guys surfed. And that was it. I had enough money for me to live on, and I could pay for drinks for me and all of our friends when we'd go out dancing till dawn. It was a fun life for a 20-year-old. Now, unfortunately, it did end quite quickly. My apartment was broken into one night by a man who tried to rape me. That he ended up going to jail. The police found him. So that part was okay. He didn't actually rape me. I screamed loud enough that someone came in and stopped it. But when I went to do a road trip to kind of clear my head, I decided I'd go spend some time in Acapulco. I was attacked by bandits on a mountain road, shot at, had to sleep in a ditch all night. And anyway, the next morning I called home and my dad answered and I was like, hey, Dad, can you send some money? I want to pay someone to drive back up to Puerto Vallarta with me. He's like, why? And I said, oh, no, I lost my purse. He's like, Angie, why? I was like, oh my God, so this happened and that happened and da-da-da. And he's like, that's it. He's like, you're not driving back to Puerto Vallarta. You're driving to Mexico City. I'm canceling all my meetings this week. I'm going to fly out tomorrow, be in Mexico to pick me up at the airport tomorrow. Start driving now. Call me, tonight and I'll tell you what my flight is. I'm just like, okay, Dad, I'll be there. And so that was it. We ended up having a crazy 3 nights. It took about 3 days to drive back to America. But after that, I decided to, generally speaking, try and solo travel around countries that were a little bit safer. And that was my first time being an illegal immigrant because I was planning to live there, but I hadn't done it legally. I just went down on a tourist visa and I was working illegally, which is the basic, that's a pretty common thing for some immigrants to have to do because they don't have a legal visa. So that was my first time as an illegal immigrant as well. Now, from there, I still had the travel bug and I ended up saving money and the following year moving to Europe. I bought a one-way ticket to Amsterdam. I didn't know where I was going to end up. I just wanted to travel and then figure out, work small jobs and travel and just, I had no plan. I told my parents I bought a round trip ticket, but I did not. I bought a one-way. And I ended up going from Amsterdam down through Paris, northern Spain. I traveled Spain for quite a while and ended up in a seaside village called Sitges, which is 25 minutes south of Barcelona. I ended up living there 4 years. I got married. My daughter was born there. And it was amazing. I started again as an illegal immigrant because I worked all summer without a proper visa. When I got married, I then became an immigrant because I still was planning to live there forever, which is what an immigrant does versus an expat. But then when my daughter was born, I wanted to move back to America because my family is just different. I wanted her to be around my family. So we did move back to the U.S. I ended up divorcing my husband within the first year of moving back. And so it was just my daughter and I for about 6-7 years. But I wasn't happy in America. I was traveling all the time. We moved back in 1995. And 1999, for example, I went on so many international trips. Most of them, all the international ones on my own. My daughter would stay with my parents. But I went 3 times to Europe. One of them was a road trip from Germany down to Dubrovnik, Croatia. I did another road trip at Thanksgiving that year with my good friend Mark. And we went from London, all around kind of the southern part of the UK. But I kept leaving America and finding my greatest joy outside of my life in the US. So we ended up moving back to Spain for about 8 years. Well, we thought we would live there forever, but then the economy crashed in 2008. So by 2011, I wasn't able to find work any longer. Greece, Poland, and Spain were the 3 countries hit hardest by the economic crash. And it was just impossible. I was a chief marketing officer, VP of marketing communications, and they were giving those roles to middle managers and cutting the salary significantly. My daughter was in private school, and I didn't want to put her back into public school, so we had to make choices. Basically, sat down on the sofa with my daughter. It's like, okay, Mommy can't find work anymore. Where do we go? And we identified 7 countries. We literally opened up Google Maps on my laptop and started going country by country by country, region by region. And we identified 7 countries that we both agreed would be countries that we would like to live in. We did it very democratically. And India was one of those 7. And that was the country that offered me a job first. So we ended up moving to India. When I was 40, and my daughter was 15. It was summer. She was about to start her IB program, so that's the last 2 years before uni. I found a great school for her in Bangalore. I ended up working, that'll be another episode because that was kind of a wild and crazy time. In the end, I ended up working for an outsourcing company, which wasn't the job I initially went over for, but I only worked part-time. So I did random jobs, like I worked for Guns N' Roses, and I was their head of social media for their India tour. I actually toured with them across India. I started a blog the first day I moved. I had jet lag, and it became the #1 blog, and I had a newspaper column, and it was a very crazy time. I'm actually writing a book about those 3 years and what it was like for my daughter and I there, because it really, there was a lot of good, but it's not the best country for women. So there was kind of a lot of bad too. My daughter left to go to uni while we were living in India. I then moved to China. I was there for a short-term project, 3 months. I lived in Beijing. Then I moved to Hong Kong. I ended up working for a very popular singer named Gem. She's basically like the Taylor Swift of China. And that was really fun. I then moved to Malaysia, and I was there. That was kind of a rough, I moved there for a job. The job didn't work out. They really tried to screw me over. And tried not to pay any severance. And I had just relocated, spent all that money, and that was really crazy. So after that, I ended up working basically just freelancing because I couldn't find another job that was of equal salary. Salaries in Malaysia are quite low. And while I was offered great roles, chief marketing officer roles, it was a salary I couldn't live on because I was paying for my daughter's university myself. My husband has never paid child support, and he's never contributed to her education costs. So I was paying for her housing, her uni fees, food and beer, and I was paying for mine too. But I ended up becoming a digital nomad, and I was traveling around, and I have a YouTube channel, WanderwithAngela, that is it's a great gift because I'm able to collaborate with lots of different hotel brands and properties. And so I just kind of went around. I was working by day and shooting video. And then at night, I would edit my videos and do a little more work. And it was great. I'm now in Indonesia. I've been here almost a full year. I'm quite specialized now in hospitality marketing. So I moved to Indonesia, to these beautiful Riau Islands. And I had been working with spas and hotels and hospitality brands, but with COVID-19, that has become impossible, and I've lost all of those clients. So luckily, I still have restaurant clients, and they are on the uptake. I specialize now in food delivery websites and branding for restaurants. I'm now moving back to Kuala Lumpur. My visa is in progress as we speak. I'm so excited, because I have been completely alone in this apartment that I'm in, which, again, beautiful view. I'm very happy about that. But it's been quite challenging having no social contact here and being so alone. So I am excited to move back. Hopefully in October, before my 50th birthday, I will be back in KL, back where I have friends, and able to enjoy life a little bit differently again. So if any of those misadventures of mine sound anything like what you might want to tackle, or if you want to learn from my mistakes, because I am not a planner and I am terrible with money. So you can imagine the mischief and mayhem that I put myself into because of those two faults of mine. I'm going to be sharing tips and tricks, travel guides. The interviews are going to be really fun. I want to talk about the fun of dancing till dawn. And my goal is to keep it upbeat with friends who really have a perspective and something to share that will be a little bit different. And hopefully something that will keep you listening week after week. Well, if you have stayed to the end, thank you. Join me next week when I'll be talking about how traveling can't make you happy, but can help you find yourself. Thanks for listening to Always Get Lost. Have a great night wherever you are, and never stop wandering.